Gen Z and their homecoming. Are you a Gen Z or a Zoomer? Have you been living with your parents or relatives since the pandemic broke out? And do you feel like staying back and not shifting back to the costly city you went to work in? Don't worry, you're not alone. In the US, nearly a third of Gen Z is living at home and they plan to stay back. Welcome to Basically. Today, we are going to look at how the Zoomers are considering staying with their parents as a long-term housing solution. Who are Zoomers? Zoomers are men and women between the ages of 18 and 25, part of what is collectively known as Gen Z. The Western cultural generations can be divided based on Christopher Nolan's favorite subject, time. Like the Lost Generation, born between 1890 and 1950. The Interbellum Generation, born between 1901 and 1913. The Greatest Generation, between 1910 to 1924. And the Silent Generation, which is broadly our grandparents, were born between 1925 to 1945. Then the Baby Boomer Generation, 1946 to 1964. Generation X or Baby Bust, 1965 to 1979. Oops, our parents are from a generation called Baby Bust. Anyways, next is the Xennials, 1975 to 1985. Millennials, aka Generation Y, aka Gen Next, born between 1980 and 1994. And Gen Z, who were born between 1995 and 2012. In India, generations tend to follow a pattern similar to the Western model. One interpretation sees India's independence in 1947 as India's major generational shift. Indian boomers are those born after independence and into the early 1960s. How has the pandemic in America made the Gen Z comfortable staying with parents or relatives? This year's rapid inflation rates have meant higher prices for almost every essential thing like rent and food. From the very beginning of the pandemic, flocks of young Americans were moving back home. A 2020 analysis found that about 2.7 million adults in the United States moved in with a parent or grandparent in March and April of that year. In our country, we know all too well how people were forced to go back home from cities like Pune, Bangalore, Noida to the place we were born. And both in America and here, living at home with family is now often viewed as a permanent housing solution. In the US, a multinational personal finance company called Credit Karma published a recent study that 32% are spending roughly half their monthly income on rent. And on average, a Zoomer's household income is under $50,000 a year, which means a bit more than $4,000 a month. In India, the living cost in a metro city like Bangalore is 21,000 rupees a month, out of which the major chunk goes towards paying rent. And guess what? There is a non-partisan American think tank based in Washington known as Pew, which claims that the average income of an Indian family is between 22,500 rupees to 45,000 rupees. And so you can clearly see what a toll rent takes on our lives. So basically, in America, Credit Karma suggested no more than 20% of income should go towards housing. But 28% of survey respondents reported that they're unable to save any money at the moment because rentals are so high. Is your work location a metro city? Is rent hard for you? Are you considering going back home? Share your stories with us in the comments below.